The transport came down in the eastern field on a Thursday, which is how I always remember it. Thursdays at the clinic were quiet, and I heard the impact clearly through the open window. I was the only medical post within 40 kilometers. That was not modesty. It was a geographic fact that the resettlement office had noted in their files and then apparently forgotten. By the time I reached the crash site with my kit and Aldrin Oss's cart, the 2 adult Caliph aboard were already past anything I could do. I documented what I could, signaled the recovery bureau, and stood for a moment in the field while the dust settled around the wreck. Then I walked back along the field row with the cart. She was in it, sitting up in the back, knees drawn to her chest, holding a small woven pouch by its cord. Gray-green skin, enormous dark eyes, ears tapered to fine points. She looked at me the way a person looks at someone they have decided on balance to trust. I sat on the cart's footboard and said in Caliph 3 that her people were gone. She held the pouch tighter and said she knew. I asked her name. She said Ren, which was not a Caliph word, but it was the word she used. I said she could come inside. She did. The resettlement office sent a form 11 days later. It classified the placement as temporary, pending relocation to a recognized Caliph community hub. I signed it, filed it, and put Ren's bedroll in the room beside the storage closet, which had the best window in the building. The first officer arrived 8 weeks after that. A Vithani male, tall, methodical, carrying a leather satchel of intake documents. He sat across my desk and explained that temporary placements were intended to bridge, not to become permanent, and that there was a Caliph community center in the Aral system where Ren would have cultural continuity, peer cohort, and supervised development. I told him she was not here at the moment. She was at the schoolhouse. He asked when she would return. I said she would be back for supper, and he was welcome to wait. He waited. Ren came back, looked at him, looked at me, and went to wash her hands. He spoke to her in standard Caliph too. She answered in mine-accented frontier common, which she had picked up with unsettling speed, and told him the Aral system was 3 transit weeks away and she liked it here. He made notes. He said the process would continue. He left. The second officer came 11 months after the first. She was more direct. She had a relocation order, not a form, and she explained the distinction carefully. I explained, equally carefully, that Ren had enrolled in the Frontier qualifying curriculum, that she held a registered learner's number with the Settlement Education Bureau, and that moving a registered learner mid-cycle required a co-authorization from that bureau, the receiving community's intake office, and the child's documented guardian of record. She asked who the guardian of record was. I handed her the document I had filed with the settlement registry 14 months earlier. She read it. She looked up. I looked back. She said she would need to escalate. I said the escalation form was on the back of the document she was holding, pre-filled with my contact details at the bottom. She took the form and left. Year 3 brought a different pressure, not an officer, but a letter. The resettlement office had reviewed the case and determined that the co-authorization pathway I had invoked was being used in a manner inconsistent with its original intent, and they were formally notifying me of a policy clarification that would close that avenue within 60 days. I read the letter twice. Then I walked to the schoolhouse, where Ren was helping the younger children with their number drills, and I told her what was in it. She thought for a moment. She asked if the policy clarification applied to cases where the learner held dual registration, settlement curriculum, and a trade-qualifying apprenticeship. I said I did not know. She said she would find out. She did. She had apparently registered as a formal apprentice with Aldrin Oss's equipment repair shop at some point in the previous year, which neither Aldrin nor I had fully understood the implications of at the time. The dual registration pathway was a separate provision. The 60-day closure did not apply. I asked her how she had known about the dual registration provision. She said she had read the resettlement code in full during the months before the second officer arrived. The Frontier Common Edition ran to 4 volumes. She had borrowed them from the Settlement Registry Office, one at a time, over several months, and returned each one before taking the next. I looked at her for a long moment. She was small still. She would always be small by Caliph measure, which is itself not a large people, and her hands were chalked from the number drills, and she was looking at me with those enormous dark eyes as though she had simply done a reasonable thing and was waiting for me to agree. I asked her if there was anything else she had filed that I should know about. She considered the question with more seriousness than I thought it deserved. Then she said not yet. I went back to the clinic. She went back to the number drills. Year 4 brought nothing. The settlement went on with its ordinary business, harvests, equipment breakdowns, a bad respiratory season in the eastern quarter that kept me busy through the autumn. I assumed the office had moved on to more tractable cases. Year 5 brought a brief inquiry, automated, I think, to which I responded with the current documentation. Year 5 ended quietly. The officer who came in Year 6 was senior. You could tell by the satchel, which was better quality than the previous ones, and by the fact that she came with a colleague who took notes and did not speak. She laid the case history on my desk and told me, not unkindly, that the temporary placement provision had a hard outer limit of 6 years for non-species matched guardianship, and that limit had now been reached. I said I understood. She said the removal order was not punitive. It was regulatory. The office had a responsibility to Caliph children, and that responsibility required placement in species-appropriate care environments. I said I understood that too. She asked where Wren was. I said she was at the registry office, as far as I knew. The senior officer looked at her colleague. The colleague looked at his notes. We sat in a civil quiet for about 12 minutes. Wren came in. She was carrying a document sleeve, which she set on the desk between me and the senior officer without comment. The officer opened it. Inside was a completed permanent residency declaration, the kind that a person files on their own behalf, which requires the signatory to meet an age threshold, a continuous residence threshold, a documented contribution threshold, and a registered apprenticeship condition. Wren had met all 4. She had filed it that morning. The registry office had accepted and time-stamped it 11 minutes before the senior officer had knocked on my door. The officer read the declaration. She read it again. She looked at Wren. Wren looked back. The officer said slowly that a permanent residency declaration was not within the scope of a temporary placement review. Wren said she knew. That was why she had filed it as herself, not as a ward. She handed the officer a second sheet, the registry's acceptance confirmation, with a case number and a jurisdictional note explaining that a valid permanent residency declaration superseded any open temporary placement proceeding under Settlement Code Article 31, subsection 9. The senior officer set both papers down. She picked up the removal order. She looked at it for a moment. Then she set it back in her satchel. She said she would note the declaration in the case file. Wren said thank you. The officer and her colleague left. I heard their transport start up in the yard. I heard it pull away. I looked at Wren. She was reading the acceptance confirmation again, slowly, the way you read something you have been waiting a long time to hold. I told her she had read 4 volumes of resettlement code, when she was still losing her first adult teeth. She said someone had to. I had no answer for that. I made tea. She sat across the desk from me, and we drank it while the sun moved across the window, and the field outside stayed as it had always been, quiet and wide and full of ordinary Thursday light. Some children find a place to belong. Some of them find it and then hold on with both hands and refuse, quietly and systematically and without drama, to let anyone take it from them. That is the kind of child Wren was. That is the kind of child she stayed.